Hey everybody, welcome back. Season 3 of the Takeover. I'm not even gonna hit you with a whole bunch of pleasantries. We got another one for you. We got a banger. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Hey everybody. You're back at the Takeover. This is gonna be the best two-part episode of your life right now. This is gonna be part 1. And you're here with your host, Marcellus. You can call me Marcellus, you can call me Cellus, you can call me Sel, you can call me Fave, you can call me whatever you want to call me, but you cannot call me empty because I'm full of the love of Christ. Now, y'all know we are dealing with what's really going on. That's what we are dealing with in this season 3. What's really going on out here in our world. And we're talking about this series, The Family Ties That Bond. And I call this episode Mix and Match. Not mismatch, but mix and match. Okay, because we're dealing with a topic that not many people in the church want to touch, but that's what makes us different. We're going to do it. Now, before we get started, you know that my thoughts are my thoughts. So if I say something that you don't like, that's all right. Let me know. Send me an email, shoot me a text, comment on the video. But they're not indicative of the thoughts of anybody else. Kingdom Heaven Ministries, Apostle Lon W. Brown, Lady Francis Brown. They ain't had nothing to do with my thoughts. These are my thoughts. Okay, so if you don't like it, hey, it's tough, first of all. But, let me know. We can discuss it. No problem. We're going to start out like we always do. We're going to start out with some word. All right. We're going to start in Psalms 139, verses 13 through 16. And it says, "You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed." Now, I know y'all probably wonder, what does that have to do with anything? I want you to really focus on how important each of us are to God, that He saw us being developed. He watched us being developed in the womb, and He saw everything that was going to happen in our lives. Now, He didn't create it all, because we had we have this will that He gave us, and we get to make these choices that determine things that are happening, but He saw those choices that we're going to make. But every moment was already laid out because He had already seen it. He's Alpha and Omega, so He's already there at the beginning and the end of our lives. So just think about that. That's how wonderfully complex it says we are as individuals. God's workmanship is marvelous. And if you think about the way babies are formed, man, there's no other way to put it but amazing. That's why they call it the miracle of birth. But before we get into our main topic, y'all know we got to deal with these current events. And we're going to start with our COVID-19 chronicles. Now, new COVID cases in our country has plateaued. So it's no longer going up. It's not really coming down. It's kind of plateauing, right? That's good. However, it's plateaued at 60 to 70,000 new cases a day. That's not so good, right? Like, it's plateauing, and we can get happy about that, but we still getting too many cases daily. So we got to be real smart about our behavior and what we're doing. Don't start sleeping because the vaccines are out there and start doing just reckless stuff. We don't want to be like Europe right now. Europe is fighting their third wave of COVID. And so major cities like Rome, Milan, Venice in Italy are all on lockdown right now. They can't leave their houses unless it's a medical emergency or they have to go to work. So We don't want to be like them. And one of the ways we can get like them is spring break. It's coming. I know. There's a concern. I am also concerned that a lot of this travel during spring break is going to cause a spike in cases. I know spring break is a time where normally we can be reckless, we can just cut loose, but for the sake of your neighbor, for the sake of your family, for the sake of everybody, including yourself, reel that in. This is not the year. This is not the year. By the time you see this, some of us will probably already have our third stimulus check. As we know that package was approved, and those checks have started coming out based on your 2019 or 2020 tax refunds, your tax status. So I know there's a lot of things out there about what to do with your stimulus checks. So many social media experts all of a sudden telling you to invest in this and invest in that, get you an LLC. I ain't saying none of that's bad, but look, do what you want to do with your money. Feel me? Like, do what you want to do. That's the nature of it. It's yours. So you want to go buy 10 pair of shoes, you go buy 10 pair of shoes. If you want to go buy an LLC, you go do that. If you want to take that and invest in Bitcoin, do that. Do what you got to do. But don't let nobody else govern your pocketbook or your wallet. It's just, and please, man, if you're investing and you're doing well, that's great. That's great. But don't feel like you just need to tell everybody what to do all the time. That's not a good look. You ain't out here Edward Jones. You know what I'm saying? Just let people be them. You know, have this stimulus money for some people is going to get them through the next couple of months. So ease up. Ease up on trying to tell people what to do with their money. Now, I would be remiss if we didn't take some time right here to deal with the Kirk Franklin situation. If you guys don't know, Kirk Franklin was recorded by his son, his oldest son, who was 33 years old. Kirk Franklin is 51, so he had him when he was 18. He was recorded. Phone conversation that was between them was recorded. Kirk was heard using some very colorful language, full of a lot of expletives, some MFs and some everything else's. There's been quite a loud chorus on social media from surprisingly a lot of church people, and you might be saying these church people must be condemning Kirk, and that's not the case at all. There's been a lot of people in the church that are coming out to his defense, and I, for one, find that very interesting. I just want to tell you what his son wrote when he posted. This is his son speaking. Right, wrong, indifferent, I don't know. This is what he wrote. He said, when he posted this video, he said, "This is why I'm done. No father should speak to their children like this. If I have any issues, it's because of this type of treatment that I deal with behind closed doors. Hanging up in my face. No apology, no compassion, no effort. Stop telling me to go home to my family. I don't even know where they live. I don't think I'll ever trust my father to be alone around him ever again. I didn't want to do this. I probably won't release the entire recording because it's too embarrassing that I'm even dealing with this. No matter what people think, I pray my dad deals with his deep hatred towards me. I don't feel safe around him at all. This recording is recent. It is not from 2018, just to clarify. I'm going to learn from these experiences, live my life in peace, and make beautiful art." Again, these are his words, his son's words. Now, I've been real quiet on social media about this because, and I want to point out that Kirk Franklin came out, and how most of us found out about this is through Kirk Franklin's, because he obviously has a much bigger reach than his son. He came out with an apology video. In his apology video, he talked about not being perfect. He talked about him and his son having a toxic relationship that they have gone to therapy for, and this was an example of that. And so that's kind of what sparked people coming on, saying, you don't have to apologize, Kirk. Your kids can take you there. Your kids can do that to you. Y'all don't know some of y'all pastors cuss. That's what happened behind closed doors. That's private family business. His son never should have recorded him, never should have posted it. And I'm just thinking like, wow, this is some new age Christianity for you. It's so many so many parts to break down here. I don't know where to start. Well, first of all, his son has said in the past that y'all don't know the true Kirk. And so in his mind, this was his way of showing people, this man is not who y'all think he is. And to be perfectly honest, he kind of succeeded in doing that, because a lot of people thought, based on Sunday Best, based on the Kirk Franklin channel on Sirius XM Radio, based on his music, that he was kind of for lack of a better term, a holy man, and lived his life in that way, in that manner. But I think we have a hard time separating condemnation from judgment, from just pointing out the truth. First of all, the Bible does say that we are going to judge the church. The church is going to judge the church. That's what's supposed to happen. So if you out here supposing to be part of the church, guess what happened? You're going to get judged by the church. So when you're a public figure and a video you go public and you doing some crazy stuff, it's going to get judged. And that's what happened here. So when people talking about don't judge him, read the Bible, okay? Just read it. I'll try to remember to put that scripture at the bottom of the screen. But here's the thing. We have to be able to point out wrong without condemning somebody to hell. Like, ain't nobody got no hell to put Kirk in. This ain't gonna make him go to hell because he cussed. Not in and of itself. Nah. If that's the case, a whole lot of us going to hell. You feel me? Because we didn't have some cussing in our past. We didn't have some cussing. We found out Justice had some cussing in him a couple of weeks ago that he had in his past. So we have to be able to, as Christians, be able to say something is wrong without condemning somebody to eternal damnation, because that's not what the issue is here. Here's I did respond to somebody's post on social media, and I don't remember verbatim what I said, but what I said in a nutshell was he wrong for what he did? Yes. Was his son wrong for posting it? Yes. I don't think he should. I don't think you should have put your father on blast like that. But hear this. That man is 33 years old. This two grown men talking. Now, I can tell you, I'm a grown man, and I'm not about to let my father cuss me out if he was ever going to do that. Now, I have never heard my father cuss. I for sure know he ain't going to let me cuss him out. Now, we ain't finna be on the phone cussing each other out. We gon' if it come down to something like that, the phone's gonna get hung up, because grown men ain't just gonna sit there and just listen to that. That's crazy to me. And then to hear what I'm assuming is Kirk's wife laughing loudly in the background or cheering. I'm not gonna play the video. I'm not gonna do that because of the language in the video. But to see that, and for us to act like that's okay because we cuss. And when I say we, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the people that are publicly defending. Most of them are writing, hey, sometimes your kids can take you there. Your kids can get you to that point. And you got to just let them have it. That's a grown man. So is Kirk, a grown adult, older, supposed to be a man of responsibility. We can't allow people to push us to that point. If we're allowing people to push us to that point, how weak does that make us? Now, see, here's the irony for me. If that had been Donald Trump cussing out his son, we would have been on him like white on rice. We'd have been on him. when he said that, when he got caught on tape saying what he said derogatory about women, grab him by the, you know what? Oh, we was on him calling him everything in the book, from racist to male chauvinist to misogynistic to everything else. And yet Kirk can just say all this and we say it's okay? That doesn't make any sense. Now, when we talk about treatment of women, we say, rightfully so, that the way they dress, the way they talk, shouldn't determine whether or not they're leered at or they're looked at as sexual objects. Because just because a woman is scantily clad, it shouldn't make you see her as a sex object. Why doesn't that work? Just because this son, in Kirk's mind, disrespected him, that shouldn't make him go off like a wild man, MFing and everything else. And then you got people saying that the son disrespected him. How do we know? The video of the recording didn't have the son saying a whole lot. It had Kirk saying, I won't be disrespected. And the son said, I didn't. We don't know what happened. I know we know some stuff happened in their past. That's why the son mentioned 2018, but we don't know what happened. So, listen, I ain't defending the son. I ain't defending Kirk. I don't understand how us as Christians can come out, quickly. We out here in full force. Check your Facebook. We out here in full force. Kirk ain't do nothing wrong. Kirk ain't do this. Kirk just like every one of us. Kirk just got tired. Kirk this, Kirk that. No, Kirk messed up. He let his mouth get out in front of him, and he got out of control. He got mad. He let his anger get the best of him. He got mad and lost control. That's not how grown adults act, whether you're a Christian or not. Forget that. Throw the Christian to the side for a minute. As an adult, as a man, that's not how you act. Period. And then one thing about me, I told y'all, I don't come to y'all with this show as a perfect person or even trying to be perfect. But one thing I'll never do is have my imperfections and try to explain them as okay. That's crazy. I won't try to explain them. If I do something wrong, I'm not going to get on here and say, well, it's okay to do it because I do it. That's silly. Doesn't make any sense. And you know it's going to be somebody, I already know. Hey, cussing ain't in the Bible. You don't see them words in the Bible. How you know? Read your Bible. I'm just going to say read your Bible. It talks about profane language in the Bible, okay? There's a whole lot of other scriptures I could go to. I'm not going to, because that ain't the point. Like I said, Christian or not, as a father, that's the example you show your son and the rest of your children. Even if y'all relationship is jacked up, but the rest of your children, that's how you reconcile a relationship with him and show them how to reconcile? Nah. And see, it's perfect timing that this came up right before this episode, because these are the things that families deal with. But it's time for us to be real about it, y'all. Let's stop defending this and call wrong, right, a spade a spade. But I done long since stopped messing with Kirk for a whole bunch of other reasons. So ain't really no skin off my back. But you know what? And we need to get into this topic. We need to get into what we're dealing with today. But just a minute, before we do, some of us taking this quarantine a little too seriously as far as our praise team and our choir. We not getting no rehearsal in. Listen, you got to sing at home. You got to come together, do some virtual rehearsals. You got to do something. You can't just come back on Sunday morning and think we just going to come together on Zoom and everything going to be cool. Or we going to Facebook Live and everything going to be, it don't work like that. You don't believe me? Check this out.
I don't have to work. Oh, it's working for me. Working for me. It's working for me. It's working for me. It's working for me. Working for me. Oh, I don't have to work because it's working for me. 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 Come on, Tiffany, let's give God praise. He's intentional. He's intentional. Yes, he is. He's intentional. Oh, he's intentional. Yeah. He's intentional.
Now, first of all, a couple things. First of all, you know how they say make a joyful noise unto the Lord? That's what that was. I don't know about joyful, though. It wasn't a lot of joy on them faces in there. But get this. Did anybody notice that in the corner where they said how many people was live on there with them, it was only 3? I saw somebody say this. This ain't mine. I saw somebody say this. Somebody said only the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit could appreciate that noise. And I just thought that was hilarious, man. The Trinity was the only one because, you know, my God, today. Get some practice in. That's all we're saying. Get some practice in. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to be talking about part 2 of our Family Ties That Bond series. So this is part 1 of part 2, right? Today is the blended, or what we're calling bonded families. Mix and match is what I call it. We're mixing up families, but we're matching them together. Now, as our opening scripture, if you remember, let us know God recorded every day of our lives before one had passed. He may not have made everything happen because we operated at our own will, but he knew it all. Knowing that is part of what makes us all wonderfully complex, unique individuals. While many have a particular plan for their family, we all kind of come up with this ideal. Sometimes all those complex individuals I talked about come together in many different ways and forms to join in one family unit. Now, what we want to talk about today is something that's not talked about much, and what are the keys to making blended families work, or bonded families hold strong and grow together? Well, let's find out, shall we? Now let's revisit what the family is, first of all. Kingdom family, from Words in a Different Light, is a faith camp authorized to train men and women, insisting on lifestyles that yield purpose. Remember, we talked about this in the last episode. Family is the basic unit responsible for relationship formation and character development, promoting the expansion and advancement of kingdom of God so all can experience the enjoyment of a kingdom lifestyle. 3 laws associated with that are dedication or commitment, devotion, moral demand, destiny, focus of training, family. So we're talking about this faith camp that the devil is attacking. And why would he be attacking it? Because this is the unit that's responsible for relationship formation and character development. So if I can get them in a character development phase, I got them. And that's what the devil is doing to us. And so how do we promote and protect that kingdom family? Let's look at the word first. Ephesians 1:4-5. Check this out in the New Living Translation. Even before he made the world, God loved us and chose us in Christ to be holy and without fault in his eyes. God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. Now, we're all in the body of Christ in one big blended family. We see that right here. God said, Paul said, God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family. So if we can understand what the word's view on the blended family is, or how God expects us to act in the body of Christ, that will show us how to act in our own families that are blended together. See that? So that was, I didn't even, before this episode, I didn't even think about it like that, right? So we need to look at the word from a different perspective when it's talking about the body of Christ. That's a blended family, and how that's supposed to operate will show us how to operate in the blended families. Now, a lot of you don't know, a lot of you may not know that I am a part of a blended family. And that's going to be our guest for this week, my family. I wouldn't ask anybody to talk about this sensitive subject without being willing to talk about it myself. And my family was gracious enough to join me in that endeavor. Well, hey, everybody, I told y'all we were going to have guests this week. And as you can see, we got a bunch of them. We got guests all from my family. We're talking about family ties that bond. We're talking about blended families, what I like to call mix and match, and not mismatch, mix and match. Okay, and that's what we're talking about, how to make what the world knows as blended families, how to make those work. So here with me, I got my parents, George Miller Sr., Janice Miller. You all met my big brother last week, George Miller Jr., and I got my big sister on camera, y'all. This is a special moment. She only will do this for baby brother. I got my sister Sheila Johnson, formerly Sheila Miller. But anyway, hey family, how's everybody doing?
Great.
Right.
Good.
Good.
All right. Now we're gonna jump right in here. We're gonna jump right into this thing. What we're talking about, blended families. I gotta tell everybody before we get too far started, and I don't even know if y'all know this, parents. I didn't really know we were a blended family for a long time. I remember talking to Mom in Perry Drug Store. I don't know if she'll remember this, but I heard you talking to someone in the store, because this is the age before cell phones, talking to them about your anniversary. So it was around this time of the year. And you said somebody asked you how long you've been married or something. And you said the year, I was like, it was the first time in my mind I had started adding. I'm like, oh man, that's George, eh? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, if it was wait a minute, mama. And I remember asking you point blank at some point, I can't remember if it was in the store or afterward, but like, you had Sheila before you was married. That's basically what I asked, because the first time I thought about it, I might have been 12, 13 years old, I remember, but it wasn't like real young. And I brought that up to say this: how did you guys keep it so it didn't really matter, and nobody even cared to even try to figure that out or anything like that? And we just thought we were your average two-parent home like everybody else.
I think it's because we didn't show a difference in our children, and none of y'all, so you wouldn't have knew. We didn't treat one no better than the other. You were like equal. I had people tell me, you got a daughter, she should be treated different than the boys. I always said, no, they're all equal. They're all my children, and they all have different characteristics, but I treat them all the same.
How, I think your question, and it's a very good question, how did we keep it so that there wouldn't be difference shown? And it has to be a goal, because it wasn't always easy, because when you're not the biological parent of a child, at least in my era of growing up, I really didn't know how to face this challenge. And when I had to confront it, it was more of a adversarial type of challenge, because I had to go forth and say, what do I have to do to make sure that the children do not know a difference between one another and our love toward them? And then when I did find this answer, it was in 1 Corinthians 13, which is love. Love covers a multitude of sin. Love covers a multitude of mistakes. Love covers everything. So my goal began to be that I love every child. And I think this is what Mom is saying too, when we say treat. I think love was the glue of how to love, or how to be toward each child the same way. And so that's how I got to where I got in loving my children, so that there's a catch-22 to this though. And that is, when you do this, then you don't want anything to come in that might break that. And so I'm gonna let you ask that question later because I think I know it's coming up. But there was some challenge with that, with loving you and making sure each child was loved the same, so that the child, you were the target in the beginning, not people from the outside, but you. I knew if George saw a difference between the way I treated him and the way I treated Sheila, or if Marcellus saw a difference in the way I treated him toward the way I treated George, or toward the way I treated Sheila, then we were gonna have problems down the road. And so my target was that each child would feel loved the same. Believe me when I tell you, that's a challenge.
All right. So Sheila, obviously you knew, I mean, you were the oldest, so you knew that you were coming into a situation, if you will, another family that wasn't biologically your father. How did you, I mean, and you were young, but I don't want to assume anything. So I don't have any understanding of that. So you tell me, what is it like for a young child to come into that?
Well, yeah, like you stated, I was young. So when little girl went up to the age to where daddy and mom told me, this all I ever knew was this was my dad. This is daddy. So as daddy stated, I can say that I didn't feel like that I was loved any differently. There's challenges where me growing up that I had to deal with, of not feeling totally part of the family. And it's not nothing that was portrayed or that I experienced from mom and dad or anything. It's just something that, you know, how you get older and you begin to think and you notice things, how you differ from each other. Like I've always admired you and Boogie's relationship. And so I always used to wonder, wow, I wonder what it would be like knowing other siblings that I had possibly could have. And I didn't even know that I had other siblings until way later on in life. So, but yes, I do have to agree with daddy. There was not ever a time when I felt like that, you know, there was a difference shown as far as the love. And like mama stated, we're all different personalities. So they had to learn to love us how we accepted it. We all knew that we were loved, but with us all having our each personalities, I knew that, like daddy said, is a challenge.
So obviously, George Jr., I'm sure you knew before I did. I was just probably naive. I mean, I guess for lack of a better term. But I like to think of it as just I didn't feel any reason to try to figure it out, right? She looked like dad. So I mean, I just assumed she always called him daddy. So it was I had no thoughts of anybody else. You probably knew before I did, but how did we, because sibling rivalry can be a big thing in blended families. And so how did you help foster us avoiding a sibling rivalry?
Well, you know, I don't know if honestly me and you probably knew about the same time in different situations, but that's another story. But with me, it was always us. You know, we spent so much time together from the days of being home alone, with parents working, making things work out, from, whatever they had to do when it was just us at home. I just saw siblings, and it was a wonderful thing to me. It was family. It was us hang out. We were friends. We were like our friends because, we lived in neighborhoods where there's a bunch of old people. A lot of times there wasn't many people for us to play with or anything. So it was always instilled of us as, family was family. And what we saw even from, our parents and their family, even the dynamics of them were very different. Mom and her siblings and dad and his siblings. dynamics were different, but we knew those siblings were people that they protected. And we got to see that even in our younger years from any situations where, they were with us or we were with them. So to me, it was always about, I'm in the middle, and I didn't really look at it honestly as being the middle brother. I ended up being the biggest, however that came about. So I'm there, and I always knew it was always taught to us to protect our sister for sure, if anything, even though she ended up protecting us. But that's a whole nother story
Here
too,
we go.
that we talk about. But, even as, seeing that part of her as a 5-year-old, it took that much, it gave me obviously eyes open, but made me respect her even at that point, because we knew the quiet Sheila. We knew the Sheila that sat back, and she wasn't gonna let nothing happen to us regardless. And she proved that to me right then, even though the person, didn't want to, was messing with her and then decided they want to say something to me. That was like it for her. And it was like, okay, I can ignore you, but my little brother's here with me. So we about to have a problem. And that happened that way. So it carried on to me, even as, us as siblings and being home, having to the point, you and Sheila, even though I knew Sheila could whoop you on up, it was me to jump in, when you wanted to take that remote. You know what I'm saying? Because we had one TV, and luckily we had a remote at that time. We
Right.
had TV up there when there was remote time, but it was like automatic jump to me to jump on you, and like, don't you ever, put your hands on our sister again, like, well, on my sister. I'm saying like my sister, like it wasn't our sister. But I felt like I had to make sure that you knew that, because I'm the extension, even though I'm, scared of daddy, I'm still the junior. I'm like the extension. It was like natural thing coming together. And even today, Sheila talks about our bond, you and me, Sellers. Of course, it's far and above anything that I've ever had. And I tell people about it too, but we always even talk about our sister. And even to the point when, and I'll end with this, you were telling me, after our last broadcast about us doing this and us sitting down and having this call, and you said, yeah, even us is having, a half sister. And I paused, and I don't know if you thought you knew why I paused. I paused because I was trying to think, is mom and daddy gonna tell us about somebody else? Because I never looked at Sheila as a half sister to that point. I had to literally think of it at 45 years old because of how we were trained. I was like, oh yeah. Because I literally was like, man, I know ain't something I don't know about. They got to tell us about, because never at any point, no one, even after finding out, it was like, that ain't even, so what, whatever. That don't matter. Nobody else needs to know whatever. That's our sister.
Oh, no doubt about that. Like I said, I don't know that we've ever used the term half sister unless I was explaining it to somebody. Because it was never, it just wasn't that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even, the term was foreign to us. But let me ask this, mom, dad, whichever, what goes into that decision on when to tell? Because I know Sheila said y'all told her, I think George and I both kind of found out informally. So what goes into that decision on when, what age? Is it a maturity thing? Is it, what goes into that decision?
Well, being the head of the family, that decision, Sellers, because of lack of knowledge, I tried to avoid. And through conversation with your mom, I became convinced that I needed to share this with the family as a whole. Having no training in even the term that you're using today, blended, we didn't in the 20th century use that at all. As far, most I ever heard was mixed family. We didn't use blend. Matter of fact, when I just did some research and thought about it, today I actually saw that there was blended in my Carlisle heritage, and forgot about that because Uncle Bill was a Comer. So all the Carlisles, he had a different father. I didn't even think about that in our relationship with him growing up. We never, it was just like my mama's oldest brother, and that's the only way we ever saw it. But it was just today, as I knew that this was going to take place today, that I thought about it. And I had the same light bulb to come on that you did about a blended family when we was having a conference at that our church was attending, and it was on blended families. And I was like, well, I looked at Mom, I said, well, that we don't have nothing to do with that. I mean, and then all of a sudden, as I sat there, I'm like, oh. Then I tapped her again. I say, we do have a blended family, don't we? I'm like, because it's just, I was in such contention with fighting anything that would divide us after I became convicted, after my struggles with it in its beginning. After I came convicted, an elderly person told me, if you mistreat your daughter, and that's why I was so, you can ask Mom, I was so strongly intent and fighting out in the courts to get her name changed, because I didn't want any difference between the three of y'all. So we had to go down to court, and I fought until, and I was not relieved until that name was changed, and she became Sheila Miller. So the fighting to keep it, you know, the continuity there as one, and then all of a sudden now you gotta introduce, it's like introducing a bill that's gonna uncover that there is difference. That was a struggle for me, not knowing when. There was no certain time that was right. It was just like, I didn't want y'all to think that we was lying to you. And so it was a matter of, we wanted to keep everything out there so that everybody know what's going on, and don't, you know, have that, well, they lied to me all these years, you know.
I can remember we were in revival at church, at One New Man, and somebody asked Daddy how long we had been married. And he came and told me, he said, oh, it's time to tell Sheila. He said, because they're going to start putting two and two together. And so she was 9 years old. I said, okay. So we told her. It didn't faze her a bit, of course.
Yeah, like we didn't say nothing.
So, and I can't remember. Did we tell everybody at the same time? No.
No, we told them two in the,
Just me.
Yeah, we told her by herself, and then we told
them two together in a car.
I can't remember. I show that how much I put it out of my mind, because I didn't think we'd ever have to. I knew we'd have to do it one day. I just didn't know when it would have to be, because all she ever knew was Daddy as Dad. That's all she ever knew. Because when she first met him, she wasn't even 2 years old. So all she ever knew was that face. And the first whooping she got, I'm pretty sure, if she was old enough to remember it, she would know it came from him. but yeah.
But I had good reasons.
I remember mine. Praise the Lord.
Fell out on the floor because we told her she couldn't have something. Something her mama told her that she couldn't have. She fell out on the floor and just kicked. And it's just something just took over. I like.
I met and Dad had asked me before we were just friends in the church. and he asked me, could he help me raise her? Now, we weren't talking about getting married, nothing. We were just friends going to church. And I said yes, because I didn't know. I was young.
16.
I figured he knew more than I did. He had a mom and dad. So, yeah.
That was a Mac. That was a Mac line he hit you with. That's all. He hit you with one of them Mac lines. Well, I know I got it from somewhere.
Macaroni.
That macaroni Tony line right there. Baby, let me help you raise your kid. That's a new one. That's a new old. But no, that's man, that's yeah, when she was 9, I was only 3 months, so I'm sure you didn't tell me at the same time. But we define on this show, we have defined family to be the unit responsible for character building and relationship formation. Specifically about relationship formation, does having a blended family make that more difficult in being responsible for forming those relationships, or was it basically just, status quo?
Well, I say status quo because, like you're using the term blended, and that's a true term in the sense that I talked to Mama about baking a cake and all the ingredients that goes into baking a cake. When you come to the final production of that, you don't want to be tasting those individual ingredients. You wanted them to be blended so well together that you can't tell this is the sugar, this is the baking powder, and this is that, and this is that goes in the cake. You don't want that. You want it so blended together that it's just a cake. And I just want, my target was we to be so together that everybody said that's just a Miller family. So I know we did a good job on that because on several occasions, Sheila was referred to as looking just like her daddy. And I just like, yeah. And like I said, it does take you down a road, Marcellus, that you have to be careful because there's going to be a time where you do have to reveal. And that could bring some open, because it's almost like I'm saying likened to pretending. And then you got to come and break open reality. So doing it over again, I would always say, plan when you're going to reveal this to your family, because they need to know that they can face whatever they face with the truth. There's nothing greater than the truth, and the truth can take anything. And this is where that's why I looked at her and said to Mom, we got to tell the boys, because it's like, I didn't want you to find out from somebody somewhere else, but I did know you're going to do the math later on. I know that y'all was too smart. So I know you're going to do the math and figure something out. And so you're going to have some questions. So we need to, in retrospect, I would say you should sit down with your mate and decide this is when we're going to do this. But sometimes when you're striving so much to keep it in the unity, that's a scary bridge, because you don't know how y'all going to react. I kind of feared that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that cake mix thing, because I thought about that when we were talking about this topic. And I think there's some people that are going to see it as a cake, and some people are going to see the ingredients. And I think that's what maybe Sheila dealt with, and she can explain what she was saying earlier. She started to see the ingredients as she grew up and started to understand some things. And so, obviously you start to want to know more what's in it, right? You know what I'm saying? What's in the cake. And so she had to go down that path where I think George and myself were more just like, hey, that's German chocolate cake. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, whatever it is, break me off a piece. You know what I'm saying? That's what it boiled down to. But Sheila, I know your dad made your biological father. I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear. I've never heard my sister say anything else than our father, the one that's on the screen with us now, is her daddy. And I think that's very important to say. That isn't that she doesn't recognize she has a biological father. And I know that he made a few appearances along the way. Actually, I really don't know. I heard through the grapevine, you and mama talking. You know, how were those initiated, and what type of positive or negative impact did they have? Because some people are going to be experiencing that same thing.
The first time, can y'all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. The first time, I was still home with y'all, with mom and dad, the family. And daddy came home and he said, your biological father is up here at this car wash. That car wash, I don't know if daddy remember, on Dort Highway, right there on Dort and Lippincott.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came home and he said, come on, you want to meet him? I said, me being at that age, sure, But we got up there and he had already left. The other attempts were on my behalf, married at the time. My husband and I were discussing the fact that, it's a possibility that I had siblings, and we were concerned as far as our kids mixing with them. So that discussion came about, and Uncle Bird initiated help with us and contacting his sister, my biological father's sister. So through all of that is how the first meeting came about. Actually on the phone. It was on the phone. And I had already made up in my mind that, okay, I'll talk to him. I'm the type of person that I don't, want to revisit the past. I don't need to know what everything went on. I just want to, try to establish a relationship with you so that I can get to know any other family that I may have that I don't know about, so on and so forth. And the discussion Sellers had happened to hear this day at the house with mom. I was telling her about it, and he pretty much was on the phone, and that daddy mode kicked in. And when that daddy mode kicked in, I completely just shut him down, because he, just kind of took over the conversation and trying to correct me. And I'm like, wait a minute. My last name was Miller and now it's Johnson. So once you gave up those rights back then, I don't feel like you have the right to tell me anything. So even with thinking back on that response, I could see that there was still hurt there. And then the second time he actually came to my house, and I was carrying Lemuel at the time. He is now going to be 24 this year. So, and nothing else after that. And as far as the positive, I don't really see a whole lot of positive coming from those interactions. Negatives, yes. There's always that question in your mind, why, he doesn't want to have a relationship with me, why he doesn't want to get to know his grandkids, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it wasn't all that pleasant for me. He has tried to reach out to me through others. Really didn't follow through too much on that. As I stated, in my mind, it was too little too late.
Okay. So that takes me back to mom and dad. Where was it a situation where was it open for him to be a part of her life, or had he earned that opportunity? because of his actions? I have no idea. So that's why I'm throwing these options out here. I know you mentioned earlier, Dad, that you fought for her name change. I'm assuming that means you legally adopted her. Is that correct?
That is correct, son. Um, I want to say this kind of as gently as I can. Um, her biological father was in denial. He was a basketball star at Southwestern. He gave very little interest in the whole evolving of Sheila Holmes. And we have stories of how me and Mama did come closer because I was trying to be Batman, Superman, because he was threatening her that she better not file for child support. And that was the whole foundation of his relationship with her. You better not file. And I know he in there. And I'm telling both of y'all because he had a friend that stayed across the street. Mom stayed at Mother Layton's house on Park. Yeah, Evergreen off of 12th Street, Evergreen right there. And she stayed in the basement of Mother Layton's apartment. And he was constantly threatening her that he was going to hurt her if she tried to claim that Sheila was his child. And so that's when I felt in proposing to your mom, after I did that, I wanted the whole family, I wanted the pack, I wanted to protect Sheila, and y'all wasn't there yet. But when y'all came, I wanted to protect everybody from this situation. So that's why I wanted the name changed, so that I was expecting to have more children and I didn't want any difference.
Wow.
Now,
All right.
he did know that he did admit he was her father. Just let's make, he did. When my auntie found out I was pregnant, we called his mother and we was on phone. He was on one phone and his mama was on the phone and we were talking, and his mama point blank asked him, and he said, yeah, it's my child. But that's all he wanted to have to deal with it. He wanted nothing else.
Yeah, and I know that it was a different time and that was more commonplace. And I guess I don't want to say it was accepted, but it was more commonplace for it to happen. And, you know, biological fathers trying to denounce their, there's a song that came out when we were in high school, Biological Didn't Bother, that George Jr. will know about. And what he said was, it was Shaquille O'Neal said, Phil is my father because my biological didn't bother. And that's kind of the vibes that I'm getting from this situation. But then I know George recently told me that he had a run-in with, as far as I know, I never had. I wouldn't know if I seen him, if he was sitting across the room from me right now, I wouldn't have any idea. But I know George recently had or not recently, he recently told me he had a run-in with him in high school. And how did that come about?
Man, it's crazy. Just, what learning now, just different aspects of it and counting, as you said, we did. I actually met Sheila's biological father before she did, which is like kind of blowing my mind right now. But anyways, I was at Central. I never forget walking the hallways. Probably was late for class, knowing I'm trying to be cool or whatever, to be quite honest. And guys like, you George Miller? I'm like, yeah. And me, I'm thinking, well, who doesn't know me? I'm basketball, So yeah, you know, you want an autograph or something? What? But you know, he said, yeah, your mama Janice, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you want to give me a family history or what? Like, what do you want? Like, I'm trying to get moving. And he just like almost walking with me. And he was like, yeah. And he just came out, I'm Sheila daddy. And I looked at him like he was crazy and didn't really say nothing. And he was like, yeah, how is she? How you doing? I was like, man, what you want? Because obviously I'm trying to register this whole thing at the same time. Like, hold on, no, what? And I never forget. That's why I knew it had to be, you know, my sophomore year. I was 15 and you were still in middle school because mom was coming to pick me up from school at that point. And with him, I gave him a real deaf look. Like he never talked to me ever again. I couldn't even tell you what he looked like. Now, like you said, I could be sitting next to him and talking to him and couldn't tell you. But I had to collect myself in that moment. And I say it's good I didn't know what I know now because I would have handled that different. Even at that age, because I'm still protective of Sheila and I'm protective of anybody talk about my mama, to even mention my mama name. And then gonna tell Janice I said hello. And that's really when I just walked away from him. And he had this little smirk on his face or whatever. And I was like, okay, you know, he hit me, he done got in my head now. And I'm, you know, going to get in the car. And it was near the end of that day. It wasn't even like I had to go to classes long again because mom was there to get me soon after. And, you know, me even not knowing, like I had to ask her and go to her. We going by, I can remember, I didn't do it as soon as she picked me up in front of Central.
Rizzo.
She asked me, how's the day, whatever. But by the time we got to Rizzo's, I had to, you know, bring it out and ask. And it was just very, you know, she, you know, mom, she's gonna tell me yes. And that was it. I didn't need any more explanation. I didn't have any more questions. And my thoughts automatically be like, okay, she don't need to know I know. And Sellers definitely don't need to know. I'm going to the point of like, well, I can keep it from Sellers and just be something I know and call it what it is, you know? And so for me, for him to have that audacity was crazy. And now hearing everything that it is now, it just brings a different light to it. I could say that. But that was sophomore, 15-year-old, and you have the audacity to come to them, not knowing the family dynamic, not knowing if the parents have told, and to know now that I actually met, you know, Sheila's biological father before her, it blows my mind to this day because people have to realize they're learning a lot that we're learning, even because these conversations didn't really happen. You know, this it wasn't the same of it coming together, and we just weren't raised that way. So that encounter was, you know, mind blowing, but it was never something that I held on to even at that point. And as you say, you just found that out a week ago that I even had it. So I didn't even know I was still hiding, even all these, you know, 30 years later.
I'm always the last to know, boy, that's for sure. But that's the problem with being the youngest, boy. I find out stuff years later. But you know what? I'm thinking as you talking, and as Sheila was talking, and as Daddy was talking, I'm thinking, boy, even I don't. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know. They protected me from myself in a lot of ways because y'all know I had a real quick temper, and I just didn't like people like that. You know what I'm saying? And that was a real disrespectful comment to say, tell your mama I said hello. That's real disrespectful. And you know, just not telling me and not knowing who he was, because I got in high school and started feeling myself. You ain't no telling, I probably would have been looking for somebody or something like that. But I think a lot of it, and what you just said, is that we're finding out some things because these conversations always happen. I think there was reasons why they didn't happen. I remember, growing up, mom and dad did a lot to protect us from things that could harm us or situations that could bring us harm, even if it meant not associating with certain parts of the family or things like that, wherever it took to keep us safe and to keep us together. And I think some of those conversations had to happen later in life just because of, for me, at least for my attitude, because and they obviously knew that very well, but yeah. How difficult was it, Mom, when you and Dad started getting closer, whether it was before y'all started dating or just after? How difficult was it to tell them really what was going on, as far as not just Sheila, but as far as everything else? You have more.
Well, Dad graduated 2 years before I did. So when he ran back up on me, I was walking to work and I heard this voice saying, Janice, Janice. And I kept walking. And then I finally turned around. He said, don't you remember me? And he asked me where I was going. And I told him. And so he took me to work that day. And the next day, he showed up at school at Southwestern to pick me up from school. Now, he didn't know I had a child. And I didn't volunteer the information. So he picked me up, and on the way home, I said, well, I got to make a stop first. And so I had to pick her up from the babysitter. And I went and picked her up and came back to the car. He said, oh, you have a child? And I said, yeah. He said, is it Bobby's? I'm like, yeah. And from that point on, I don't know what it was, but it's like he became a protector. Because he knew my family life. He knew things that I was going through. He knew I was in a blended family,
In the strongest sense of the word, blended. You were.
Not having parents at age 8 and you got to come and live with a whole nother family, even though they're relatives, it's a blended family because she got 6 over here and 5 of y'all, and you're all in a 3-bedroom house. And there's never privacy. There wasn't no privacy, but there was never enough love to go around for a blended family that way. It's like you have a resentment. I had to take these 5 in. Now that makes me have all these children. And I remember I always said, I used to hurt. And I used to say, Lord, don't ever let me see no child that's not loved enough, because I'll just reach out and love them. And that goes back to that blended family of how to blend it together and not show a difference, because there was a difference. You had to fight for your life. You had to fight for your food. It was just there. And but when Dad came along, it's like he was a protector. He knew I shared with him things that I had went through, and he knew. And all he told me was, I'm going to introduce you to my pastor. And so I talked to his pastor. His pastor got me out of my situation. And in the meantime, I met his mother. And with her help, I was able to, share more things with him. And he was able to be more of a protector to me and Sheila.
Wow. I know, but we got to stop right there to just in recognition of the time. But there's more to come next week. We're going to finish hearing from my family about all the things they went through. There's going to be some surprises in there that maybe you didn't know at all. To be perfectly honest, there were some things in there that I didn't know. I learned some things with you in this episode as well. So listen, before we go, remember, hit that like button. Smash it down. Smash that thumbs up. Let everybody know you're enjoying this content, you enjoyed this video, and then share it. Share it with people that might need it. Maybe there's somebody in a blended family that's having some trouble, that maybe needs some encouragement and see how things can go when they're done, not perfectly, but when they're done in love. And then subscribe. Make sure you subscribe so you know the next time the next video will be coming out. And I promise you, you won't regret it. Now, I'm going to leave you with a quick final word from Ephesians 4, verse 16. It says, he makes the whole body fit together perfectly, as each part does its own special work. It helps the other parts grow so the whole body is healthy and growing full of love. He can make the whole body fit together. Remember, I told y'all if we learn from the body, we know how to deal with our family. So God can make our whole family fit perfectly together, even in all its individual parts. Until next week, stay tuned for part 2. We'll see you. God bless you. Take care. Love you. Be safe.